The shadow. What a wildly misrepresented, extremely misunderstood concept. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jackie and I help people elevate, enhance, and improve their lives to find happier, healthier, more fulfilling lives through finding a balance between their mind, body, and soul. Today, I'm going to talk about the shadow self, what I believe is the #1 misconception about the shadow or the shadow self, as well as my experience with the shadow. My ideology that there are misconceptions about the shadow and the shadow self and the shadow work and shadow is because of my experience with the shadow. The idea of the shadow self was philosophized by Carl Jung back in the early 1900s. He was a Swiss psychiatrist. His ideology is that everyone has this shadow self, which is either a side of us that we're unaware of or a side of ourselves that we're not willing to acknowledge, or maybe that we're afraid to acknowledge. And I think that now more than ever, we are afraid due to these theories and these ideologies about the shadow self. We're afraid to explore the shadow. Shadow self, as theorized by Jung, is made up of parts of us that we either repress or deny, largely due to our self-image. These pressures that we have, whether it's from society or culture or family, friends, etc., etc. By definition and by wild understanding, this shadow self is made up of parts of us, whether they're actual traits of us, desires, quality, maybe even impulses that are perceived as negative. And the shadow in general is perceived as negative. That definition by Jung, that the shadow is something that's negative, and the interpretation of the shadow being something that's negative, is where I completely deviate and I completely disagree. I do not believe that the shadow is negative or something to be feared or something that's bad. I very firmly believe that the largest misconception about the shadow or the shadow self is that it's something that's negative, or that everything in the shadow is negative. The name itself, shadow, implies something dark, and something dark implies something bad or evil. All these implications that it's something bad, it's something to be ashamed of, something wrong, or something cruel. All these things that are implied are just so bad and so negative, and that's what makes people afraid to do the shadow work. And that's what makes this idea that shadow work is so hard and it's so dark and so bad. And now Carl Jung even suggests that everything that's within the shadow is negative. He lists traits such as arrogance, impulsivity, aggression, dishonesty, jealousy, pessimism, insecurity, entitlement, manipulativeness, insensitivity. I could list these traits forever, but these are all the traits that are said to be hidden in the shadow. The reason that I disagree with this is because there are heaps of people out there that have all these negative traits, this dishonesty, this pessimism, this selfishness. They have all those traits out in the world for you to see, out in the bright light. Like, they are not trying to hide it. It is who they are, and it's not hidden in their shadow at all. It's in broad daylight, this flaunting of their aggression, their jealousy, etc. I don't need to engage with society to know that people flaunt those traits, because I too used to be that person. I used to be extremely insecure, very jealous person, beyond pessimistic, very aggressive. I used to keep a cup of pennies in my car to throw at people on the road if they would piss me off. Like, that's how fucking aggressive I was. And that wasn't hidden in my shadow. That was out in broad daylight. That aggressive person wasn't hiding like, oh, I'm so scared to be aggressive. No, she was out there throwing fucking pennies at people. God forbid you were driving by in a convertible and did some dumb shit. I'm going to throw a penny at your fucking head. People who knew me 10 or 15 years ago, they would have the perception of me that I'm a bitch. That was who I was. That was my reputation. People who know me now can never believe that that's who I was. Sometimes I can't even believe that that's who I was. Like, bitch, you were throwing pennies at people? I have to say that I don't think that people can grow as a person without doing this shadow work. Shadow work is a springboard for positive change. It's a springboard for evolution, for growth. When I started doing my shadow work, I started to uncover the why I was all these ways. So what's hidden in the shadows isn't the negative trait, it's the reasoning behind the negative trait. The reason you're a jealous person, it's the reason you're an aggressive person, it's the reason you're selfish, it's the reason that you're insecure. That what's hidden in the shadows is the programming, not the negative trait. I don't believe that that's a bad thing hidden in that shadow. For me, what was hidden in my shadow was the answers to fix my negative problems, not more negative problems. And I don't know about you, but for me, that's a positive. So what's hidden in that shadow isn't all bad. It's actually kind of fucking good. On the topic of positive, what was hidden in my shadow was the good side of me, was the happy, the kind, the compassionate, the person who's like, okay, go ahead on the road. Hidden in my shadow was my optimism. I'm one of the most optimistic people I know. I will find the positive spin on anything. But 10 years ago, that's not who I was. The optimistic person that I am today was hiding in the shadows because she was afraid to be vulnerable. My courage, my strength, my humility, these things were all hidden in, well, some of my humility is still hidden in the shadow. I'm still looking for the rest of it. I'm a kind and compassionate woman, and that woman was hiding in the shadows. And until I did the work, the shadow work, to find out why I was behaving in these negative ways, I wasn't able to uncover the positive traits within me. The kind, compassionate woman I am today was hiding in my shadow because she was afraid to be seen. That negative bitch that I used to be, she had no problem being seen. You know, you can witness her in her bitchiness, no problem. Is working with the shadow a walk in the park on a sunny day? No. Was it sometimes unsettling to discover the ways that I had been holding myself back? Of course. Was shadow work always comfortable? Hell no. Hell no. Is shadow work hard? I mean, that's subjective. The shadow work itself isn't necessarily so hard. Admitting to myself the harsh truths about myself, that was the hard part. Allowing myself to be vulnerable after decades of putting up walls, that was hard. I'll tell you one thing about shadow work. It is not as hard as people imply it is. It is not something to be feared. It is something to look at as an opportunity. It's not as hard as living life with a shitty attitude and a bitchy negative mindset. Living with a vendetta against the world is way harder than doing some shadow work and admitting some not so great things about the way you've been operating on the planet. I am definitely going to expand on this, but for today, I'm just going to leave it at that. I wanted to introduce the concept of this shadow as not something that's so bad. And of course, that the shadow is most certainly not something that we need to be afraid of. It's something that we need to learn to embrace and welcome in. Now, if this is something that you don't agree with, if you think my take on the shadow is completely wrong, give this video a thumbs down. Drop a comment below. If you agreed with me, if I opened your mind to an ideology that maybe you hadn't thought of before, give it a thumbs up. Also, let me know below. My name is Jackie, and I help people elevate, improve, and enhance their lives to live happier, healthier, more fulfilling lives through finding a balance between their mind, body, and soul. You can find me on social media. I'm at Jackie is Alive on everything: TikTok, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. You can also check out my website, JackieIsAlive.com, for more of my musings and ideologies. And I make new videos every week, so don't forget to click subscribe, and I'll see you next week.